So we do have a quorum here, so I will call the meeting to order, and I would ask for your approval of the agenda which has been circulated.
So,
All in favor?
Second. Sorry.
The minutes of September 17th have been circulated. I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There's no correspondence and no guests. The next item on the agenda are fund requisitions. They are items 1A through D. If there are no comments or questions with respect to that, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. On new business, I had circulated a memo with respect to, there was a question relative to the purpose of the use of the funds for the $5 million CPC bond. And it is clear that the purpose of those for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is that they're being used exclusively for the acquisition of real property. So that is what the minutes reflect. It's what bond counsel, that's the nature of the approval that was given at town meeting. So that means that the discussion with respect to the application for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is appropriate this year, and we make a determination as to the amount of funding that we want to give with respect to that based on their application. Maria?
Just a comment, because we have two new members, and when this came up, it wasn't when they didn't actually formally do the grant proposal process. The grant deadline was over, and we had an extensive discussion on protocol and whatever. There were 5 for it and 4 against. It might help if you looked at or read the minutes for that meeting, because we had a lot of.
I just got an email. Dawn said she's online.
So who's joining us for the meeting? Is it Dawn?
Dawn, yeah.
Can you hear that, Dawn? It says you're ready.
Is there a mute button?
No, it says ready.
They didn't have to do anything.
No mobile phone does. Sound station.
Got a little space.
Is that a mute down here?
Yeah. Do that.
Hello, Dawn? Hello?
I would have thought that we would have had to dial in.
Yeah.
She said it was all ready.
No, usually if you're the host,
You dial in.
they dial to
But we
you.
have to
Yeah.
answer, so maybe we have to,
With the phone thing.
yeah, when she calls in, pick up.
Well, she said Dawn says she's dialed in and she's on the line.
Are you having
Do-
issues with the phone?
Yeah.
We are.
Deanna, can you have the phone there, please? I'll let the pro do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
We hear somebody's on the line, but we don't know how to bring them.
Welcome. This service is provided by freeconferencecall.com. Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign.
Whoops,
286453.
sorry. The wrong number.
It's listed there, yeah.
Welcome. This service is provided by freeconferencecall.com. Please enter your access code. You entered 286453. If this is correct, press 1. There is one other participant in the conference. Please announce yourself.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Dawn.
You know, somebody else calls in and they automatically.
We had a little, we got some technical help, so now
Do you
you're
ever know
on.
who calls?
Maria,
Announce
John,
yourself, so they just-
Jack, Tim, Joe, and I are here. Linda and Diane are still missing.
Okay.
All right, and we just started the regular meeting, and Maria was just giving a little bit of background relative to the discussion around the allocation of the $5 million bond.
Okay.
And those of us that were concerned about it was, number one, it was a large amount of money. Number two, it was a little bit out of our protocol because they did not submit a grant. They came in after the fact. So anyways, it would be worth it if you're new to the committee to look at the minutes or look at the video, because it is a large amount of money. And you know, it's hard when you're coming in new that you don't know the background on what we've been up to. And the Affordable Housing Trust has since come back again, and some of us were surprised that they came back when they got the large amount that they had in the
Yeah.
past fiscal year.
And the only clarification I wanted to make was that that by way of background, there had been no funding available for the acquisition of real property. The citizens warrant relative to the 20 million didn't exist. The town had asked our finance department to find $3 million to be able to have funding available in order to be able to make it available to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund so that they could have a pool of money to acquire properties when opportunities came forward. And that was what was brought to us, and what was voted on was to make that pool of money available. It was to be available for the acquisition of real property. And a bond was then authorized to be able to make that happen. So the question was whether or not that money was eligible to be used by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for funding other areas such as Housing Nantucket and Habitat Nantucket, because all of those requests are supposed to come through Affordable Housing Trust Fund with respect to the policy that we set for that. And the answer is that the money was not supposed to be, that money was not allocated or dedicated to that purpose. And so that the application that they made this year was on behalf of Housing Nantucket, one for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and one for Habitat. And so those are appropriate to consider for this committee with respect to the overall application. The other thing that I wanted to do was to provide you with the amount of available funding for this year. And I did send a memo to you, basically to recap. We have about, coming from the CPC surcharge, interest and the state match estimated at $300,000, we have $2,710,000 that is available. In addition, there is $119,000 plus change in open space, dedicated reserves, and there is $18,600 in designated reserves for historic preservation. There is nothing in reserves for affordable housing. In the undesignated reserves, we have historically had a policy of keeping $750,000 in undesignated reserves. There's about $966,000 in change, so there's a little bit over $200,000 in undesignated reserves that could be available for us to utilize. At this point in time, we have committed $587,000 already with respect to $125,000 for the Nobodere playing fields, $112,000 for Satcham's Path, $350,000 for the bond, and $350,000, and $125,000 what we have usually done with respect to administration. Although technically, based on the amount, we could go up to $135,000. I'm loath to do that because of the fact that if we have a budget for that and we don't have money in the kitty in future years, it creates a problem for us. So if my math is correct, we have committed at this point in time $712,000, which leaves us about $2 million plus about 19,000 for the open space category, 18,000 for historic preservation, and a little bit over 200,000 unallocated that we could use in any of the categories that we want. So,
Ken, does that include the extra 200,000 that's in reserves over the 750?
that's what I just said.
Okay, so that's where that came from.
That's where that comes from, yeah.
Excuse me,
So-
Mr. Chair. Did you say with the undesignated funds, there were 750,000 and 957, or 75,000 and
No, no.
95,000?
No. In undesignated reserves, we have
$56?
$956,000. As a policy, as a board, we have decided over the years to keep $750,000 in that
Okay.
category.
So there's
We hold it back.
256 of the
So
reserve.
there's about a little bit over 216.
206,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
correct, okay,
right, okay.
great.
So that could be used in any category, it's undesignated reserves. The other two can only be used in the same category with which they are designated for.
Was Diane able to call in?
We gave her all the information with respect to it all.
She wanted to call my phone, but she couldn't figure it out.
Well, all she has to do is give her a call. The instructions are in the most
I
recent.
know, and I went over it with her yesterday.
Okay, and Dawn is on the phone, so it works.
All right.
Hi, I'm here.
Yeah,
On this, we have 300,000.
I said it was a mistake.
Oh, that's a mistake, so it's 350?
350, yes.
Okay.
I sent a subsequent email saying that when I transcribed that I made a mistake. So,
Do I have a correct total of 2,343,000 to give out? If you add it all together?
two, three. Yeah, around that, yes. That's good. But part of it has to go 19 of it has to go in the open space category. 18
Yeah.
it has to go in the historic preservation category. So
Got it,
yeah. And the problem is that we have to give 10% to each category. So if we were thinking that we could sort of scrape something out of the open space category, that doesn't work because we have to give 10% to that category, and then whatever else we go beyond, we look to where the sources for that funding is. But again, the requests in the open space category are beyond that anyway, so.
So, Mr. Chairman, just, could I ask to go back to the bond question?
Right.
The interpretation that you got from town council?
Yeah.
Bond council. So, just so that I'm clear, that's to be used by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for acquisition only,
Acquisition only, correct.
not repairs and maintenance?
Nope.
Because I seem to recall the discussion when we had this at the one meeting, that it was, the intent of the 5 million was to fund the housing trust fund, and they would become the one-stop shopping. All of the requests that we normally got in the past would go there, and that $5 million plus whatever they had would be the money that they use to be, if you will, the overall housing buyer, repairer, so on and so
No,
forth.
that's not in fact what
Well,
the,
I understand what the bond council is saying, but I'm also agreeing with Maria that if you go back to the discussion we had, the translation between what we voted and what you just read are two different things.
well, but that, when I checked with Barry, I did not give him any suggestion as to what my view was or my understanding was. He said that his understanding was that because of the circumstances that the select board had asked to find $3 million with respect to providing money to acquire real estate, and we as a committee had decided to make that $5 million as opposed to the $3 million request, and that it was to be used to acquire real estate. So, and that's Brian Turbett's recollection of what he presented as well. So,
I'm on board with Tim in terms of what I recall, and I know I heard an umbrella organization. Isn't this gonna be problematic when they've come to us for an $800,000 grant, but they haven't said, Habitat for Humanity, we're gonna give them this much, and whoever else, we're gonna give them this much.
No, their grant this year, if you take a look at it, was in three categories, three separate amounts for three different initiatives. Their grant, their grant application had allocated the 670 or whatever it was into three separate,
So here's what if I could carry on.
I went over it with her.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just carry on a little bit. So if you take their grant of 800, whatever it is that they're looking for this year,
Yeah.
then you add the $350,000 bond payment, which we, the majority gave them last year.
Okay.
They're basically up
Wait.
over $1 million. That's half of the money that we have to give
Couldn't
out.
get her.
To me, that was one of the reasons that I voted in the minority in March, because they're just taking over all the funding that we have for all the worthy projects.
yeah, but Tim, the answer to that is very simple. That if it is a decision of this committee not to award that, that decision stands. We have the opportunity to make the determination as to how to award the available funds that are not otherwise committed. And that is one of the applications that we have the full authority to, in fact, make a decision that we give them full amount, we give them partial amount, or we give them zero amount. And there is nothing that there is nothing. Hello?
Come on, Diane.
Good morning, Diane.
I'm here.
Thank you. Dawn is on with you, and with that,
Hi, Diane.
the entire committee is here. So that's part of the determination that we make later on today, and the
Okay.
full allocation that we make tomorrow. And that is completely within the scope and authority of this group and the responsibility of this group. And whatever your reasoning is for how you vote, that's your own personal decision with respect to it. And nobody has any concern with respect to what drives the decision as to doing A, B, or C.
Okay.
Is that everybody comfortable with that?
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions then with respect to the amount of money that we have available and the sources from where it comes?
May I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
This might be a little out of order, Mr. Chairman, so could I ask through you to Channel 18, who's in the room? Would the tape be available from last March when we, CPC, had our meeting?
I don't know if we had a tape of that.
Last March.
Yeah. Do you take over
Well,
what
we do. It should be on the YouTube.
should be on the YouTube?
Yeah.
Was it
if
March?
it was at Four Fairgrounds.
Was it?
No.
No.
It was
We
at
were
the water
Water
company.
company. I don't think
Oh.
we were taping at that point.
No, we were.
We were.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
water
we were.
company. We also taped there.
Yeah.
You know what? I will look for it in March, and then I'll send it to Glenna, and then she can forward it to you.
Thank
That
you.
work?
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Yep.
That'll clear up a lot.
Yeah. Any other, Tim, either way, the fact of the matter is that whether or not whether or not the tape, you have a different interpretation of tape. Bond counsel says, and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has been instructed that it can only be used for the acquisition of property, okay? So they're operating within those boundaries. If they don't get any awards for funding from us, they have to then find another source of funding. It's as simple as that. The fact is that we're not the only potential source of funding for them.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, Don.
So last year we gave the trust fund $750,000 in
That's-
addition to that $5 million bond to use for some of these other programs.
Correct.
Or to give out to other organizations.
Correct.
I missed their presentation. How much of that has been used? Do we know?
The 750, I don't remember.
Okay.
They still had funds
I mean, there's
left.
obviously no way that we have the money to fund them an additional $800,000.
No.
On top of what we're paying on the bond.
No.
Thank you for saying
I'm
that.
just putting that out there.
I,
Yeah,
I agree with Tom.
there's no way.
What all I wanted to do, Tim, was to clarify the position with respect to the use of the restricted use of those funds, and that does not affect what we decide, because we have the absolute authority to decide how to allocate the 2.7 million plus whatever other small pockets we have in terms of the application that we have in front of us, and that's our job.
Yeah, I guess I don't disagree with anything you said, and, my only concern is, and I think I heard Linda express this at a past meeting in Maria, the maintenance, we spend a tremendous amount of money every year on maintenance of a lot of these housing initiatives. And I was under the impression that the 5 million could be used for all housing related issues. And the interpretation of bond counsel, he made that based on something, but if he had the actual video of the meeting, his interpretation might have been different.
Well, the fact is that his interpretation would have been as a result of a presentation from the finance director.
Well, whatever.
Actually, guys, what it's all based on, because Andrew and I pulled it out. We went back to what was, doesn't matter what anybody else says here, or what we said at that meeting. What matters is what was voted on at town meeting.
Yeah.
We went back and pulled out the original article that we voted on at town meeting, and that's the one that's binding. But within that warrant article, plus the discussions we had at the meeting, plus what happened on town meeting floor, it's not just, I'm gonna go out and buy that $3 million piece of property. It's public-private partnerships that buy property that gives us affordable units. It's buying units, like a house that's a duplex that's coming up that's distressed. We can buy a duplex and create 2 units. We can buy a covenant on somebody's thing. So it's buying affordable housing one way or the other. Not for the down payment assistance or gap financing or some of those things. But it's not limited to like, I'm gonna go out and buy that $3 million piece of property. It's a combination of public-private partnerships or us buying down covenants, things like that. That is creating affordable housing. So it's a little more broad on how you purchase the property and what you purchase and who you purchase it with than straight, I'm gonna go buy a piece of property. So it gives them a little bit more flexibility, but it doesn't allow them to use it for administrative. It doesn't allow them to use it for studies with the thing that does the demographics. It doesn't allow any of that down payment stuff, nothing. So that's why it's specific, no, not maintenance. It's specific to creation of the units one way or the other.
So it isn't strictly buying land. It could be a project for affordable housing that involves land, but also involves
A unit.
using a contractor that does affordable housing that's gonna do the project for us. Is
No.
that right?
Buying into a development.
Yeah, you can buy into, it's what Linda was saying, like if you wanted to do, buy a piece of property and that could have, if you do some to it, work to it, that it could now have 4 or 5 affordable units, that money could be used for that sort of purchase, so.
And public-private partnerships
Yeah.
is what we foresee, not the
Yeah.
trust assuming the entire financial obligation.
Obligation, right. Any further discussion at this point in time? So I just want to be clear, each of you has the right to vote yay or nay, or partial yay or partial nay with respect to the application from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund when we allocate the dollars tomorrow, okay? Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously.
Motion, we have to do it by roll call. Motion to go into executive session for the purposes of allocating funding.
Don't we start an open meeting with a motion
Not to
to
return to.
go to executive session, not to return to open meeting.
That's my motion,
Right, and we need to stop the filming because executive session is private.
yes, until everything's done
Yeah.
and it's released.
Yeah,
So we have to do it by roll call.
yeah.
Is Glenna not here?
No, she's home, her daughter is very sick. She's on the phone, she'll be on the phone,
On around here,
yeah.
with everybody getting sick.
So
Okay.
we do have to make that motion and second it
Yes.
first before we go to roll call.
I make
Yep.
the motion.
Yeah, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
You gotta do it by roll call.
Okay, roll call. Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
If you need to say that.
Yeah, say your
Okay,
name.
see the name.
Linda Williams.
Aye,
Williams, aye.
Williams, aye.
Thank you.
Second, aye.
Tim Severino, aye. Topham, aye.
Bogrand, aye.
Maria Zoda, aye.
John Trudell, aye.
On the phone,
Dawn Holgate, aye.
Dawn and Diane,
Diane Coombs, aye.
okay.
okay.